Hello, Mind Bloomers. This is Mind Bloom, the safe space at the intersection of mental health advocacy and breast cancer awareness. Mind Bloom is your podcast. Subscribe to hear more on female entrepreneurship and the juggling of family life, career goals, and romantic relationships. Not an easy task, especially if your physical and mental health need a big hug right now. Hello, Mind Bloomers. This is Marina G, your host, and welcome to Mind Bloom, the podcast for all things mental health and breast cancer awareness. Before we dive into this week's episode, let me just say that Mind Bloom, the podcast, and the content at Mind Bloom U across all platforms is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should always contact your providers for medical counsel. Never disregard any medical treatment or delay seeking professional help because of any content authored or distributed by Mind Bloom. Hello guys, thank you for tuning in. This is the second bonus episode of October, the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we're doing a bonus episode every week in October. So please expect episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which means extra work for me, and it means extra work for you because you have to listen to 2 episodes a week. But you can do it. You can do it. The guests are amazing, incredible. They have riveting stories to tell about their experience as breast cancer patients and as strong women who've learned to manage their anxiety, their emotions and intense feelings, intrusive thoughts, basically just keeping their mental health in check. I would like to invite you as well to go check out the podcast Take Care. The host, Saira, invited me over and interviewed me a few weeks ago, and the episode where I'm the guest speaker came out yesterday. So please go check out Saira's podcast, Take Care. It's only exclusively about mental health, and it's an amazing show. You won't regret it. And if you tune into her latest episode, then you'll be able to listen to more details of my story with DCIS and with just mental illness in terms of anxiety, depression, all of that fun stuff. So a big hug to you, Saira, all the way in California. I wish you only the best, and thank you so much for having me. Saira will be a guest on Mind Bloom as well, later, perhaps in November, December, I'm not sure yet. My guest today is Aviva Jewell. She is an incredible lady. She lives in the UK, although she is a New Yorker. And it's so interesting because as I was coming to live in the US 7 years ago, Aviva was leaving the US to go and stay in Europe, where she still is. So I'm pretty sure our paths crossed at JFK at some moment in time. And here they are, crossing again. This is wonderful. Aviva was diagnosed at 34 with early stage breast cancer, non-invasive DCIS. And she is here to tell us all about her experience, namely from the point of view of someone who is in the UK and working closely with NHS, the national healthcare system in the UK, which is free for everyone. Of course, you can argue that its cost is incorporated in UK citizens' taxes, and obviously it is. But regardless, when you go see a doctor, when you have and undergo surgery, when you undergo treatment for cancer or whatever it is, it's free. You don't get a bill in the mail. There's no copay. There's no insurance. That's it. You pay your taxes, and you have this incredible benefit and an incredible healthcare program, just working around the clock for everyone who lives in the UK. As you know, with a few changes here and there, pretty much around Europe, you would find the same thing. We basically pay our taxes, and included in the taxes is the cost to maintain whichever national healthcare system it is. Some work better than others. I'm pretty sure the Scandinavian ones work much, much better than the South European ones, but I'm not going to get into those details. What we are going to be listening to today is definitely the experience of a New Yorker, of an American citizen in the UK, and also the difference in treatment from a very privatized healthcare system such as ours here in the US, where the treatment is much more aggressive. Doctors and health insurance have no qualms with removing prophylactically healthy breast tissue, whereas in the UK, and I'm pretty sure everywhere else in Europe, doctors and just the institutions have a much more conservative approach towards prophylactic mastectomies in this case. And that was indeed what Aviva experienced. So whereas DCIS here would be treated with, if the patient so wished, double mastectomy, in the UK the story is a little bit different. So you will hear all about that. Stay with us till the end of the interview, where we'll be talking about mental health, struggles with mental illness, namely extreme anxiety, bouts of depression, and how Aviva has learned throughout the years to manage her triggers, to manage her symptoms, to manage the intrusive thoughts of second-guessing oneself and self-doubting one's decisions and one's intuition. So I highly recommend that you stay tuned, because this episode is going to be grand and fabulous and intercontinental. And I look forward to connecting with you again on Tuesday next week, Tuesday and Thursday again. So have a blessed day, a blessed rest of your week, an amazing October Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye. Guys, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Turns out it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. It will also distribute your podcast for you so that everyone can listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcast and many, many more. And guess what? You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So go download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Your home.
Right now,
yes.
My American home.
Your American home. So Aviva is an American, not in Paris, but in the UK. Where are you?
I'm in Southwest London. An American in London. Is there a book or a movie called that? I feel like there might
we'll
be.
Make one.
I don't know.
We'll make one. In fact, that's going to be the title of this episode.
An American in London. Go for
An
it.
American in London. Aviva, what?
A New Yorker in London. Really, I know you're in New York.
And the Portuguese in New York. So we have tons of titles we can cross. We can cross-pollinate. Tell me, Aviva, what makes your mind bloom in Southwest London?
not being in Southwest London. That's what makes my mind bloom. What makes my mind bloom is, goodness, you know, I grew up just outside Manhattan. I grew up in southern Westchester. So, and then went to school in the city, and I always kind of lived in or around cities. And even when I came here to the UK, I lived I've been in the London area the whole time. But since living here, I've spent a lot of time in the country and outdoors and hiking and I grew up in a family that was decidedly un-outdoorsy. They're not outdoors people. And since being here and spending so much more time outside, I've realized that I'm actually an outdoors kind of person at heart. I'm not really a city girl, as I always thought that I was. And so what makes my mind bloom, and don't get me wrong, I love cities, but what makes my mind bloom is being away from all of it, from getting away from everything and being outside and being in the mountains or by the sea. And I love people, but being away from people and just completely tuning everything man-made out and just connecting, disconnecting to connect, that whole kind of cliche, if you will. But that's what makes my mind bloom. I find that, when I'm outside, even just, today I was feeling a little bit low earlier, and I went for a walk. I live across the street from a really big, beautiful park, and just immediately being surrounded by the trees and just really setting into that and noticing my surroundings. My mind just blew.
Mm-mm. I mean, you just like a whole Emily Bronte experience.
I know. I've never been. So that takes place in Yorkshire, and I've actually never been to that part of the UK.
Anywho, so Aviva, let's talk about some of the things that have happened, especially in the last 2 years.
Yes.
I know it was a bumpy ride. A lot of things have happened, and you've been through a few things, a few treatments, a few surgeries, all the fun stuff, and all in the UK and all under the umbrella, the protection of NHS. And so I really look forward to hearing your perspective as an American on European, or in this case, British.
We haven't.
Healthcare.
I don't think it's like officially over yet. So I'm still European.
European healthcare. Then let's just call it. No, it's also because it's different from country to country.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. So I'd say now I feel it's hard to get a concept of time right now. This whole year feels like one big time bubble. So I'm like, how many years ago was it now? It's like, how many years has it been since this morning? I think this point, though, it's about a little over 2 years now. I started noticing a pain in my left breast. Kind of on the side. And at first I thought it was hormonal. I kind of didn't think too much of it. I've always had kind of wacky hormones anyway. And after a couple of months, the pain wasn't going away. It was kind of getting worse. And I thought, I should just get this checked out. Let me have it looked at just in case. You never know. At the time I was 32, and I went to see my GP. For any Americans who don't know, GP is general practitioner. I've been living here for so long now that I can't remember if that's what we call it in the States or not.
No, you call it. I don't think
primary, I ever called it primary physician, right?
Yeah,
or primary care. Yeah, I never said
PCP.
GP. My GP. So I went to see her, and I'm not sure if this is across the entire UK. I believe it is. I don't know if it's observed or not, but what is meant to happen is that anybody who goes in with a complaint about something breast related are meant to be referred to see a breast clinic within 2 weeks. So, of course, being 32, they said pain isn't an indicator of breast cancer. It's nothing to worry about. You're young, you're fit, you're healthy, but we're going to refer you because we have to, more as a formality. So I went in 2 weeks, sometime within the next 2 weeks, to the local hospital that had a breast clinic there. Sometimes it's within your local hospital. Sometimes it might be something separate. Sometimes you may have to go somewhere further afield. It just really depends on where you live. Luckily, where we're living, it's all kind of right here, right near us. And I went in and they checked me out and they said, oh, it's probably nothing, but just as standard, we're going to do an ultrasound on your breast. They did that and they saw something that they didn't like at the time. So they took a biopsy. And they still said to me, it's probably nothing. I'm sure it's nothing. You're young. You're fine. And it turned out it was just what they called benign tissue change. They said it was nothing to worry about. And they sent me on my way. About a year later, I still had the pain. It wasn't going away. And it kind of had shifted into a different area of my breast as well. So I went back again. And I said, this pain isn't going away. It's really bothering me. This doesn't feel right. Something's not right. I know my body. Again, I got dismissed about it, but they sent me because they had to. This time they did another ultrasound, again, as routine. Nothing showed up on this one. And so this time the doctor that I saw, because it was a different lady, and she just made me feel like I was wasting her time. She made me feel like, you're young, you've already been here. We told you were fine. There's still nothing wrong with you. They all kept telling me breast pain was not a symptom of cancer. That wasn't an indicator of cancer. I was too young. It's not a problem. And she told me to take some supplements, evening primrose oil, which can help with breast pain. They said, we don't know why. Some people just have breast pain. And they sent me on my way again. This time I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe they're right. Maybe it's okay. I started taking the supplements. It actually helped a little bit. It eased the pain. And then this was last July in 2019. Then last fall, or autumn, as they say here, we being my husband and I, we went traveling. We quit our jobs and we broke the lease on our flat. And we went to go and do a big round the world trip, which we've been planning for years. It was something that we wanted to do for ages, but we had to wait until I got my citizenship. So that's why we went last year. And make that long story short, we can talk about that if you want later, but to make this shorter, our trip wound up getting cut short. We went with an indefinite amount of time. Mm-hmm. We thought we'd be gone for several months to a year, maybe longer, kind of see what came up. But due to some other health issues that were going on at the time, which are fine now, we wound up coming home after 6 weeks. And at the time, I was just devastated about it. I was really upset because it had been a big dream that had fallen apart, and I didn't want to be back here. And now I'm really grateful that we're back here because we came back almost a year ago now. It was at the end of October. And obviously being here versus abroad during the pandemic has been a blessing. And being here to catch this with my cancer has been a blessing. But we were back and I was starting to have the pain getting worse again. And early March, I wanted to go see somebody. I wanted to go see my GP. But I went in and she felt around and she referred me to see somebody within 2 weeks. Yeah, that's what it was. She referred me to see somebody within 2 weeks. She felt my breast and she said, I don't feel anything. It seems fine. I'm sure you're fine. This is your third time now. It's okay. You're young, you're fit, you're healthy, blah, blah, blah. Same thing as always. They referred me. But then within that 2 week period, the UK went into lockdown. And I thought, you know what? I'm sure it's nothing. I'm just going to put it off. It's never been anything before. Even though I know something's wrong, I could feel something was wrong. I thought, I'm going to hold off. I don't want to do anything right now. And then in a little while later, I guess at the end of April, I was in the shower and this time, instead of feeling pain, I felt what seemed to me like a lump of some sort. And of course that freaked me out. And I thought, okay, I can't ignore this. It doesn't matter that we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like I've got to get this checked out. So I called up, I got the referral again. And a couple days later I was at the hospital. And again, I went in, I met with a different consultant now. So they call the surgeons consultants. I think, in the States, when I first heard consultant, I was like, consultant, is this person not actually a doctor? What does that mean? No, it's a consultant is just what they call the practitioner, the doctor. Oh. So I saw the breast consultant, and she also was pretty dismissive. She's like, I don't expect to see you again after this. You'll go do the ultrasound and then you can just go home. You'll be fine. And I went in, they did the ultrasound, and it turned out that whatever it was that I was feeling, the physical thing that I felt was tissue or a cyst or something, it was nothing. But the radiographer, the radiologist actually, she noticed what they call microcalcifications. Mm-hmm. And I remember her saying calcium flecks. And I was like, calcium, but I don't eat dairy. Like, how is there, mm-hmm. where's this calcium? It's just like stupid. Yeah. You get it. I was thinking, where is this coming from? I didn't know anything about this. I'd never heard of this before. When you hear breast cancer, you think a lump, a tumor, but actually it encompasses so much more than just that. There's so many different facets to it. It's not just, it's exactly perfect word. It's not just a tumor. It's not just this lump that we feel, that we're told to feel for. Yeah. And she said these microcalcifications, it's quite widespread. I want to do ultrasounds. I was like, oh, calcifications, calcium though, that's not too bad, right? Like we want calcium. She's like, no, this is not good. This is, I don't want to scare you, but this is probably going to be cancerous. And immediately I thought, oh my God. And this was something that I had known. I knew it in my gut. I've been going back year after year to get this check because something didn't feel right. And even though they told me I didn't need to come back, I kept going back. And then, my fears and my intuition turned out to be true. They did the biopsies, and the mammogram was my first time actually getting a mammogram. Those are not fun. No, they're not. And it turned out to be early stage breast cancer, which in my case, what I have is, or had now, is called ductal carcinoma in situ, or DCIS, and it is kind of the earliest stage of breast cancer. And what that means is it is contained within the milk ducts. And I think some people may sometimes have an actual lump in there. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I've kind of seen some people post about that in different groups that I'm in. But generally it's these calcium flakes, these microcalcifications. And that's why I didn't necessarily feel anything, but it was the pain. Some people present maybe with a rash or with, the common signs that you see, the dimpling, the puckering, the inverted nipple, whatever have you. I didn't have any of that. And that's actually one thing, if your listeners take anything from this, it's that pain, contrary to what they tell you, pain can be a symptom. Now, if you have pain in your boob, don't go freaking out. It doesn't mean, it is usually not going to be that. It is not going to be cancer every time. Yeah. But if you have a persistent ache in your breast that goes on and doesn't go away, get it checked out. Yeah. Get it looked at. Yeah. When I said to them, why did it take you 2 years to find this? They said, because we were looking in the wrong part of your breast. Mm. And I said, my boobs are not that big. They're pretty small. How is it, that difficult to have just moved the ultrasound wand over just a half an inch? You would have seen it. And, by the time they found it, it was more widespread. So basically I, not lucky to have had it happen. When I got diagnosed, I was 34. It was just a month before my 35th birthday. It was early enough that I only, and I put that in quotes because it's only, it's still a pretty big thing, had a mastectomy to remove it. Some women choose to have a lumpectomy. In my case, because the nature of the calcification was so widespread, and because my breast is pretty small, didn't make sense to do a lumpectomy. There was too much of it covering too much of my breast to have that option. So I had the mastectomy, and I've had the option for hormonal therapy to reduce the hormone because my cancer was hormonally positive. That's another thing I never knew about before I got diagnosed, that cancers are fed by hormones or they're not.
Yeah.
And which I've turned down. I'm not going to be taking it, which we can talk about later if you want. But
Totally.
Yeah. And so that's kind of that. I didn't need radiation. I didn't need chemotherapy. So in that regard, I'm very lucky.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I definitely have a ton of questions. We lost the timeline a little bit. So this ended up happening, both the diagnosis and the surgery, single mastectomy ended up happening during the lockdown in the UK. So
I went to have my tests done in early May, and I got kind of mid-May, and then I got my official diagnosis towards the end of May. And then 5 weeks later, at the end of June, I had my mastectomy. So all during the pandemic. And, since this thing isn't going away anytime soon, that's another thing that is just, if you're concerned about something, if something doesn't feel right in your body, if whether it's in your breast or anywhere, wherever something is not kosher, get it checked. The hospitals, the doctors, they're taking all the precautions that they can do. You're probably safer in a hospital than you are in the supermarket, to be honest. As a young person with anything with your health, you have to advocate for yourself. Because if you don't, they're not going to listen to you. And this is a recurring theme with so many people.
It is.
And it's a shame. It's a shame.
Let's talk about you, again, self-advocating for a double mastectomy and not getting it by any chance. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I think that's a European practice and definitely an NHS practice where they do not remove healthy, I guess, breast tissue, which is subjective, I guess. I mean, who are we to know if it's healthy? I mean, your breast tissue was healthy. Your left breast tissue was healthy for 2 years because they just weren't looking in the right place. So whereas here in the US, they're more aggressive with treatment and they are faster at recommending a double mastectomy. They even do it just to give you perspective and the listeners. They'll recommend a double mastectomy on people like me who falls in the previvor category of higher risk of breast cancer. So it's a little bit strange, to say the least, that to see the take of the UK on this. And I'm pretty sure it would be the same in Portugal and other countries. I don't see them removing healthy tissue anywhere in your body because of a suspicion. Yeah. So please tell us more.
Yeah. So when this all first happened, and they said, the best option is to do a mastectomy. And I, immediately being American and from what I know about it and everything, I thought, okay, well, I want to have my other side done also. And they said, no, the one word, I swear it must be in their textbooks of what they have to say to patients, is the evidence isn't there. The evidence, the science doesn't tell us this. The evidence doesn't tell us that. I remember one person, I think it was a nurse, saying to me, no doctor in their right mind would remove a healthy breast.
Wow.
And me just sitting there already feeling those kind of nerves. And I'm not somebody who has a problem standing up for myself, but I still, when you're in there with these people who are older than you, who are, professionals, I don't know why I'm using quotes, they are professionals. And you already feel like you're wasting their time. You're made to feel like you're wasting their time because of your age. So you already have that kind of going against you. It doesn't matter how confident you are in yourself. You still already kind of have that oh, am I wasting their time? Am I, I'm young. I shouldn't be here. So there's that. And then on top of that, I feel very American when I'm in there. I hear myself asking them questions, lots of questions, and being, for lack of a better term, enthusiastic about the process, and saying, really wanting to get into it and understand it. And then saying, well, this isn't how it's done where I'm from. I want both sides done. Why wouldn't I have both sides done? Because what if it comes back on my other side? And just feeling very American, because people kept bringing up, oh, well, it's different in America. We do it differently here. And just kind of very much like on display that even though I've been here for 7 years and I feel part of the culture now, I felt very much not a part of it then. I felt very much like somebody who is kind of just, stranger in a strange land of it, if you will. It became really clear, especially because of COVID. They said, especially right now, it's not even something that we're going to consider. Some surgeons straight out just won't consider it, no matter what that is at. Like, it is not going to happen. Others will be more open to it. I'm very lucky that mine was open to hearing me out anyway. She wasn't going to do it, but she said, let's do the first one. Let's do this, and then see how you feel down the line. I was still waiting for genetic test results to come back because of COVID, I couldn't get them back in time before my surgery. And I didn't want to wait. I just wanted to get the cancer out. So, so that was that. But because of COVID also, and the bigger the surgery, the more weakened your immune system becomes. So they said, we're not going to do the second one. It's just not going to happen right now. And I was really upset about it at first. And, talking to my family about it was tough, because everybody in the States is like, I don't understand. Why won't they do it? That doesn't make any sense to me. And so I have the people here saying one thing to me, the people there saying the other thing to me. It's completely conflicting. Also, kind of what they say here is, well, and it makes sense, in the States, the healthcare systems are completely different. In the States, it's privatized. And so there's money. And whereas here, it's not like that.
Public.
So, the public health it's just a very different thing. And it's an amazing thing, obviously. But in that regard, they're not looking to spend money excessively, extravagantly. They're not going to kind of just throw it around when they don't have the science and the evidence for it. And I kind of grew to understand that after a while. I came to a point where I said, this is okay. I can fight it and be upset about it, or I can just kind of accept it for now and know that what needs to be taken care of is being taken care of. And if I feel differently, or if I continue to feel this way, I can really push for it down the line with the other side. And it made a lot of sense to me after a while, because I thought, why remove a healthy breast? Why are people doing that? It does seem a bit excessive sometimes. If you really think about it, if you don't have to do it, then why?
But
go for it.
So you're an American, but it's interesting because it wouldn't cross your mind. I think that's what you're going to say, to come to America to be treated here because of health insurance costs. And
I know one thing
how crazy is that? How crazy is that? Wow.
I know. It was kind of at the point where this is, I'm conscious of the fact that it's a privileged thing to even be able to contemplate. But where speaking to my family, we talk about, well, if it's really not going to happen here and you really want to do it, we'll fly you home and find a way to get it done here. I wouldn't actually do that, but it was still something, being tossed around. I don't even know if that's something you can actually do, but I guess
why not?
If you're willing to pay for it, if you're willing to pay for it, you can do anything. But I had the surgery done on the one side, and I was completely at peace with it at that point. I thought, what, this is okay. It's fine. My other side is all right. I'll actively monitor it, surveillance, and see where we go from there. And then I got my genetic results back, which came back as, which I've told you about, which have come back as a variant of uncertain significance of the PALB2 gene, which basically means it's kind of a neither here nor there answer. It's not something you want to hear. Either you have the gene or you don't have the gene, but they tell you, we don't know if it's harmful or not. Variant of uncertain significance means that there's a mutation, but we don't know if it's a benign mutation or a harmful mutation. What they do here, I don't know how it is in the States, is they look at it as benign pretty much, unless there's overwhelming evidence building up for it to be a harmful mutation, they kind of just say, well, we don't know for sure, so we're going to treat it as benign until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
And we expect you to be okay with that. I don't know how anybody can be okay with that.
Yeah.
I don't know how someone can say to you, you have this mutation that might be trying to hurt you. It might not be. We don't know. So just act like it's nothing.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way. Sorry, guys. So since I found that out, and since I've done more research into, statistics of recurrence rates and of another primary cancer in the other breast, especially at my age and with my family history, because I do have a family history of breast cancer, I have decided that I do want to have the other side removed, and my surgeon is okay with that. We've talked in a lot of detail about this, and she is okay with it now. But that said, I'm like, why couldn't I have just done it at once? Why do I have to go and have another surgery now? It's not something I have to go through again. Honestly, aside from maybe not kind of having my American needs met, like I couldn't possibly say more good things about the NHS.
Right.
And what living in a country that has national health care does. Everyone in America is so afraid of, well, I say everyone, but so many people are so afraid of socialism and socialized healthcare and programs. And I can't understand that after being here and being through this and going through this whole thing. And I don't owe a penny. I don't have to think about this. I didn't have to go through this with this fear of how am I going to afford this? How am I going to do this and put food on the table, put a roof over my head? I can't even imagine what that's like. I feel so much for people going through that because I have friends dealing with that. I've had that with other things in the past. When I was home, I've seen my family deal with that with certain things. It's crazy. That to me is crazy. That to me is crazier than not having both breasts removed at the same time.
I see.
Having to have something like this happen to you and have debt because of it.
I see.
I'd rather keep my healthy breast and eventually get it removed than have to be somewhere and worrying about how I'm going to pay my bills. Because it's either I treat myself or I feed myself. It shouldn't be that way.
And to put things into context, it's when we say free, we really mean free. You did not have a copay. You did not, of course, you pay taxes, and taxes go immensely towards the NHS. So some people will argue that it's not free in the sense that you're a taxpayer, and sure. But I mean, we pay taxes here too.
I mean, the taxes here are very high. I will say that we do have high taxes, but it is, for all intents and purposes, to me, this is free. this is I'm not writing a check. I'm not thinking about it. I don't owe a penny.
Wow, crazy. It's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but how cancer is also a cultural thing, or how culture is everywhere, and just any of your decisions in life can be affected by nationalities and countries and country policies and just culture. I mean, you can say what you want about the NHS, but at the end of the day, they'll save your life. They're there, and it's an incredible institution, and I hope America cottons on, and I hope that we don't go the way of privatization, for that matter. Tell me a little bit about, you were talking about your emotional state. Obviously, it takes an immense toll on
on anyone going through what you went through. So tell me a little bit about, I know you're a big mental health advocate. You practice meditation. You're a yoga teacher on a little break.
Yeah, I'm on a break at the moment.
Because
I can't do anything.
Because cancer. But you do your stretches, and you're highly focused on your mental wellness. So tell me more, if you can, about that relationship and how you were affected mentally with your diagnosis.
I think that's something that is getting talked about more, but one of the hardest things I found was the emotional side of it all. The physical side, it sucks. It's not fun. Of course, I had the mastectomy. I didn't have further treatment, so I haven't been through chemo. I haven't been through radiotherapy, but it's something that you can get through. Mm-hmm. It's the mental stuff, I think, that, and I'm getting this, from myself, and also just from countless people that I see speaking about it, and that I also speak to about it as well. And that's the tough part, because it doesn't matter whether you get diagnosed at an early stage or at a later stage, it stays with you in your head. Yeah. And of course, obviously, the more advanced it is and the more that you have to go through, the more traumatic the experience. But once you're told you have cancer, you can't unhear that. You can't unknow that. I think for me, what I found the most difficult initially anyway was the waiting. The waiting for the answers, the waiting for the plan, waiting to find out what was going on. I like you said, I'm passionate about talking about mental health and the importance of kind of owning your mental health and looking after it, and not being afraid to talk about it, because as much as people say, oh, it's becoming less and less of a taboo, but people are still, they say that, but at the same time, it's kind of like still a bit, it's a little bit of a touchy subject. And I don't think it needs to be that way. I don't think it should be that way. So I have a long history with mental health. I was always growing up, I was a very anxious child. I was anxious young adult, I should say. I went through various bouts of depression when I was younger, into my mid-20s, really, really, it's kind of always been there, even now. It's not something that necessarily goes away, but it's something that really dominated the first kind of 25 to 30 years of my life. And in the last several years, the last 5 years or so, I'd say, I've really changed. Not changed, but I've really kind of turned it on its head and not let it control my life like it used to. And that's through a whole bunch of different ways, different things that I have done. I kind of got to a point where I got so sick of always feeling a certain way and having my life be a certain way. And I wanted to do something about it. It's not to say that that you can just want to do something about it and it goes away. But I don't know, I guess instead of fighting it, I learned to live with it. And in a way that improved my life, I guess, if you will. I was in therapy a lot. I was on medication at one point for a while, which I'm no longer on. I haven't been on medication in about 10 years now. But, it's when I started doing yoga, I started meditating, I changed my diet, my lifestyle, and all of these things added up, and they really helped me kind of have a really sound frame of mind. Also, to be honest, leaving New York made a big difference. I love New York, but there's that OK Go song, New York, I love you, but you're bringing me down. I don't know if you know it, but it's kind of how I felt by the time I left. I was like, I can't be here anymore. This place is killing me. And all these things, they've really helped and changed my life. And here it's a little bit more of a taboo subject in the UK, but in New York, everybody's got a therapist. Everybody's working on their mental health. It's not an uncommon thing. But all this to say that by the time this year that I got my diagnosis, I was mentally in the best place that I'd probably ever been in. And it's not to say that the depression and the anxiety doesn't still live in me, because it does. It doesn't just go away. It's not that I do the work and it's gone. Like, it doesn't work that way. But I've learned how to manage it. I've learned how to, for me, and it's different for everybody, and I've learned to be able to do this without medication. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you need medication. It's so bio-individual. It's so different for different people. So when this whole cancer thing happened, it really threw me at first. And it's funny because when I was younger, I was always so nervous about everything, but especially two things that were my biggest fears were cancer and pandemics. And then flash forward. I mean, literally, like I freak out about both. I always thought I was dying, and I always thought that there was going to be a pandemic, and I was always so nervous about it. Flash forward to now, where we're in this pandemic, and I get cancer in it, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm okay. I'm here. My body's intact. I'm surviving. I'm alive. I'm okay. And I actually handled it so much better than I thought I would.
Mm-hmm.
But initially, when I went to have all those tests done, and they said, this is what we think it is, you're going to have to wait a week to find out for sure an answer, I was a mess. And it was so difficult. And I thought, how am I going to do this? Oh my God, how do I? And all those insecurities, all those anxieties, all those fears kind of just flushed up immediately, which, I mean, would happen to anybody, even if you didn't spend your whole life worrying about it. You hear this kind of news and you don't know. And it's a horrible feeling. You feel completely out of control because you are, essentially. Mm-hmm. It's not in your control.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I had an answer, as soon as I had official word, this is what it is, and this is what we need to do about it, I felt okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think they must have thought I was mad, because on the day that I went in to get my results and I found out the diagnosis, the doctor said, I'm really sorry, but it's cancer. It's early stage cancer. And I just was like, oh, that's great. And I started laughing and I was clapping and I was like, I was smiling. And they're like, are you okay? And I'm looking at my husband. And I'm like, we can do something about it. I was just so grateful that it wasn't anything worse than what I thought it was. And I felt so relieved. And at that point, I kind of went into this fight mode. I said, okay, cool. I can do this. I can conquer this. I've just got to get through the surgery, get through this, and we're going to be good. But what they don't tell you then is once you finish the surgery, that's where it gets hard.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, it's right from the start. It's a very emotional, very difficult process. And for some people, it's after their surgery. And some people just kind of coast through it. Honestly, there are people who get through it and they're like, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I remember my nurse saying to me that, most people fall in one of those two camps. Either they're kind of falling apart from the start, or it happens after their surgery. And I fell into the latter camp. And there was a good couple of months after that where it was like that Simon and Garfunkel song, hello, darkness, my old friend. And I just had this this constant low level anxiety that it was unfamiliar. I thought, what is this? I couldn't even remember. I was like, oh yes, I remember what this is, because it had been so long since I'd had it at that kind of scale. And I would go up and down and up and down and up and down in ways that I hadn't in so long. And it was tough, because I was like, I've done so much to get to this point, and now this is just completely taking me back down.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in this place again. I spent so much of my life trying to get out of this place, and I'll be damned if I let cancer take over again. Well, again, if I let it take over, because cancer is a part of me, but it's not all of me. It doesn't define me. And kind of from that point, once I kind of had that moment of, I'm not going to let this dominate. I'm not going to let this ruin all of the work I've done to get here. It started to shift. And I don't know if you've read or heard of Dr. Edith Eger. She wrote this book, The Choice, and she's just had another book come out called The Gift. She's a remarkable woman, and I highly recommend her books. She's 92 years old. Is she 92? She might be 94 now. And she's a Holocaust survivor. She was in Auschwitz. And she comes kind of from the Viktor Frankl, I don't know if you know Viktor Frankl, School of Thought, Man's Search for Meaning. And I'm so inspired and informed by these people who say nobody can take what you put in your own mind. You know, nobody can change your thoughts but you. Nobody, you know, everything can happen around you to you, but nobody can take what you put in your mind. Yeah. And it's not to say that I don't have bad days, and it's not to say that this is easy, and it's not to say that you can just snap out of it and everything's okay, because it's not like that at all. There's not a day, not an hour that goes by that I don't think about this, that I don't have a moment of fear or worry about it. But I'm consciously saying to myself that I can choose my thoughts here, is what I'm trying to get at. It doesn't make the bad stuff go away. It doesn't make it necessarily easier to deal with. It doesn't mean that I don't feel depressed or anxious or low. I felt that way earlier today a lot. You know, earlier I was like, how am I going to do this call? I'm really not feeling great. But I went out, I went for a long walk, cleared my head, centered myself, got in the kind of present moment, and said, what can I control? What is going on right now? What's happening around me? How am I? I'm here. I'm feeling, you know, I'm intact. I mean, I know you know what I'm getting at. And I think that has helped me so much. This kind of idea of I can choose what I put in my head. I can choose how I shape this experience for myself emotionally. And that includes allowing the bad thoughts to come. That includes the dark days. You're just spiritually bypassing when you try to pretend those don't exist. And you can't do that, because that's not going to help you either. I struggle to say these things sometimes because I know that everybody has a very different experience. And there's a lot of people out there who I know would hear something like this and say, no, it's a horrible thing. Don't give it any kind of light. You know, there's nothing good about this. And no, there's nothing good about cancer. I'm not grateful that I got it. It's not a gift that I got it. But like I said, I'll be damned if I let it ruin my life.
It's exactly right. The demons, those voices are still around us, but we just navigate that differently this time around. I feel the same way. I had to get to my 40s to finally get that.
Yeah.
But hey, we all have our journeys.
You got there though.
I got there. Not that I got to the nirvana. We never do, right? It doesn't exist. But I feel more confident. And I feel hearing you and others that I speak for Mind Bloom as well. It is similar how you hear these diagnoses and you're like, oh, okay. So I have surgery now. Okay, I can do that. And then what? And then what? And then we wait for the biopsy. And then what? And it is manageable. Yeah. And as long as and like you were saying, I'm not making any sense either, but like you were saying, we've been in worse moments in our lives, mentally speaking, than when we were diagnosed with something complicated.
Yeah.
As cancer.
Totally. And you know, the thing is that I was thinking about this earlier, actually, how it's almost for your ego, it's safer to live in that dark place.
Yeah.
Your ego loves the drama.
Yeah.
And you know, for so long when I was in, you know, really, really bad way mentally when I was younger, in my 20s and, you know, up until probably my early 30s and really just not a good way. And it got to the point where it was a comfort zone. And when I was in therapy and when I was really trying to, you know, make a concerted effort to change that story, I would fall back all the time. Yeah. Every opportunity to go into it because it's comfortable. It got to the point where I said, you know what? I actually understand life and myself and feel safer and more comfortable when I'm in that hole. even now, it's a conscious every day. Every day I have to make choices that say, no, that's not true. That's not the story. That is not your story. And eventually it becomes easier. And then some days it's really damn hard and I just want to curl up and die, literally. and because I've been there too. But the thing with the cancer and what I noticed when I was starting to go into that dark place again, it was the same thing where I thought, it's actually easier for me to stay here. This is familiar territory. I can stay here and it feels comfortable and warm. And I know this. I understand this. This is easy. It's a lot easier to stay there, even though it doesn't feel easy. And somebody might be listening to this saying, you crazy girl, like this is not easy. But I'm sure there's plenty of people who understand what I'm saying. And actually, I decided I don't want to live in that place anymore. Yeah. It's not worth it. There's too many good things out there. Too many, I can't control what happens in the future. I can't control what happens in the past. I can control where I'm at right now. I can choose where I'm at here. But I like to talk about it in that way because it is possible to move past that and to get there. And I feel like if I can get here, maybe not anybody because everyone's got a different story, but a lot of people can too. And it's just finding what works for you and finding what's right and not pretending that it doesn't exist. It's learning to exist with it, alongside it, learning to make friends with it.
Aviva, this was so much fun. I want to do this again and we will.
Yes.
I'll see you later.
Okay. Thank you, my dear. I'll speak to you soon.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.